Hello and welcome to Mr. G's Supply and Demand Opening Demand Lecture. I remind you that you can stop this, rewind it, pause it, pick it up later, whatever you need to do. Just a reminder also that you'll have a quiz on this, so I would strongly recommend that you take notes on it. So we're going to start with demand, and to do so I wanted to start with an example first. And so on the screen in front of you, you're going to see a very rare picture. We got it as we were moving my grandmother out of her house. We found it in the attic, and I'm not exactly sure where she got this picture. I'm not sure where it came from, but I can tell you that it's extremely rare. In class I ask what this is a picture of. Most of the time most people can come up with the fact that it is in fact presidents, but when it comes to naming the presidents, people tend to struggle. So most people can get this president right here. Some people know this guy right here, and then very few people can get this guy, and almost nobody knows the president behind President Reagan there. So moving left to right, that's President Ford, Reagan, Nixon, and Carter. This is the last picture that I know of all four of them alive. Again, it's extremely rare. You don't tend to see that. Even if you Google it, you won't see a picture similar to this one. And so I'm going to sell this picture, and I need to know exactly at what price I'm going to sell it and what the different demand is. So let me give you an example of that. And so you're going to create what's called a demand schedule. Now in economics, when we say schedule, what we're really meaning is table. And so you're going to create a table in your notes, and I want it to look something like that. That's a demand schedule. You know, the left-hand column is going to consist of the price. The right-hand column is going to consist of quantity demanded. Another fun thing about economics is we'd like to abbreviate pretty much every single thing you can possibly think of. And so it's a really, really nice thing. So price will always be represented as a capital P, and so I have it in parentheses right there, right next to price. So whenever you see a capital P, you know that that's going to be price. Quantity demanded, now I don't have it in parentheses on the schedule here, but you're going to see it as Q, capital Q sub D, and that's going to always mean quantity demanded. You can probably guess what quantity is represented as, and that's going to be a capital Q. So whenever you see those, you know exactly what we're trying to say here, and that'll become really important when we start graphing this. And so I'm going to just pick a price. Now I think I can get away with selling this picture for a little bit more, but we're going to start, just for argument's sake, at $9. Now that's a huge bargain in my opinion, but I'm going to go around and look for people, show them that picture, and I get two people that decide that at $9 they're willing to spend that for that picture. And so I decide I'm going to drop the price and see what happens. And so for $8, the big bargain of $8, I'm going to see how many people are going to want that. And so again, I ask people, I walk around, I do what I need to do to see how many people are going to buy it at $8. And lo and behold, I find one more person is going to buy it at $8. Now you're going to see we're not going to put a 1 in quantity demanded, because the two people who were willing to buy it at $9 are surely going to be willing to buy it at $8. And so you're going to add that in with the quantity demanded. You'll add that one person in to the quantity demanded. So the two people that were willing to buy it at $9 now are added in to the one person who is willing to buy it at $8. This is what we're going to start to call a consumer surplus. That'll become really important later on. So I decided to drop the price again at 7. Now working backwards, if you see the 5 here, don't be confused and think again that that's, well, 5 people at $7. That meant that 2 more people were willing to buy it at $7 than were to buy it at $8. And so again, these 2 right here and these 3 right here would be willing to buy it at 7, including again 2 people that have now come on to the demand line, which we'll get to here in just a second. And so again, these three people are going to think, what a bargain, you know, for $7, now I'm going to definitely buy it. So I drop the price to 6 to see what happens, and lo and behold, I find that 4 more people are willing to buy that picture, giving me a grand total of 9 people who are willing to buy it from the price range of $9 to $6. congratulations, you've just now completed your first demand schedule. And this is what we call a market demand schedule because we have more than one person involved. So that's a market demand schedule for that picture that you saw. So, as in oftentimes in economics, we're going to graph. We love graphs, we're going to graph here. And so again, I want you to go ahead and draw in a simple graph. Now, we're going to keep things consistent here. Whenever you see price on a graph, you're going to see it on the y-axis right there. It's always going to be represented as P. You're going to see it on the y-axis. So on the bottom there is going to be capital Q. If you remember back, that meant quantity. And so you've got price and quantity again. Price will always be on the Y, quantity always on the X. And so we're going to start to graph. So what was the first price we had? $9. What was the first quantity that we had? 2 people. So you're going to go ahead and put the dot there right where 9 and 2 intersect. Drop the price to $8. We had one additional person that was in demand for that. And so we put the dot where 8 and 3 intersect. Down to 7 and 5. And then finally 6. And finally 9 people were willing to buy it at that point. Now for this you're going to go ahead and you're going to connect the dots. As we get later on, we're going to draw best fit lines. You want to be very careful on the slope of your line as this becomes real important later on. We're going to start talking about something called elasticity, but that's going to be later on in the video series. You connect the dots and you've got your very first demand curve. And again, when we call something a curve in economics, what we really mean is line. Now demand, that capital D, and again in my class you're going to want to be very careful. You're going to want to label everything. Always label P, always label Q, always label capital D as the demand curve. That's the entire curve, and this is going to become real important. In your notes, make note of this, star it, highlight it, underline it, dog-ear it, whatever you need to do to know that this is extremely important, this next point. So quantity demanded is just a point on the curve, just somewhere on the curve, a point on the curve. So at $8.99, that's going to be a quantity demanded. At $8.98, that's going to be another quantity demanded. Really, the demand curve is made up of a whole bunch of little bitty quantity demanded. They're going to be different quantity demanded. That's incredibly important that you know that quantity demanded is just simply a point on the curve, and that demand is the entire curve or the entire line. This, again, it seems like such an easy concept, but trust me, you're going to get tripped up at this somewhere in the class, and you'll always remember back, okay, quantity demanded point, demand is the entire curve. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to define what demand really is. What does it take to be on that line, to be on that curve? Why isn't it that the line just doesn't extend out until an infinite amount or extend down an infinite amount? And this is the reason why. To be on the demand curve, you must be both willing and able to purchase the product or service. Again, willing and able. And so I want you to again underline or circle or highlight that in your notes, because that becomes really, really important when we talk about, again, demand and the demand curve. You might be able to buy something but not willing to buy something, and vice versa. So, for example, I'm not willing to buy that, nor am I able. That's a private jet. And even if I was able to buy it, I wouldn't be willing to, for a number of different reasons. One being flying a plane really doesn't seem like something I'd be interested in. So I wouldn't be willing, nor am I able to do that. So again, I'm not going to be on the demand curve for a private jet like so. So again, you must be willing and able. One way I'm going to check to see if you actually made it through all of this talking is I want you to ask me why I would not be willing to buy a horse. I'm able to, but I wouldn't be willing to. And it comes from my hatred of anything horse or donkey. And I'll talk about that. Remind me to tell the story of my wife and I in Santorini. So, the last thing I'm going to leave you with before I sign off here is that you need to know what kind of relationship demand's going to have between price and quantity. All right, this is what we call the law of demand. I didn't put it on this slide, but I really want you to write that in. This is called the law of demand. and that is the fact that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. Just so that we're clear, what that means is as price goes up, quantity decreases. Again, I'm going to say that. As price goes up, quantity decreases. And so there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity. So you're going to see that's why the demand line is sloped the way that it is, because as price goes up, people are going to be like, well, I'm not really willing or able to pay that high price for that good or service. And so there's going to be an inverse. That's why the line slopes the direction that it does. We're going to talk more about that later on. But thank you, and I'll see you in class.